Hey guys, so today I thought I would take you through a project file I've been working on. It's kind of like a melodic house slash melodic techno kind of track, and I decided to do it with only Ableton Live stock plugins and presets. So if you are one of those people who don't really have a lot of third-party plugins, then this will be super helpful for you. I've also got the project file for sale on my website. It's linked in the description, and with it comes all of the samples, the drum samples and the effects and ear candy that I've made here. But today I'm going to be taking you through the creation of all sort of the main elements and kind of just show you how you can get creative using just the stock plugins and still make a professional sounding track. Okay, so let's start right at the beginning with the lead, which is probably the most important part of the track here. And there's actually a few leads. There's 2 leads and an ARP. But let's go through kind of the main one that has the most character in it. So it sounds like this. And here's the MIDI for it. And so this is just a preset that I found. If you search basic vintage, you'll hear this pluck that I found. And it doesn't really sound much like that when you first load it up. What I'll do is I'll just duplicate it and kind of remake it. So yeah, this is how it sounded when I loaded it up, but with just a bit of the tweaking with the macros that come with it, I found that if you turn this pulse width all the way to the right, you start getting this kind of a sound. And I thought that had like quite a lot of character and it was kind of unique. It's not just like your plain old saw wave pluck that you've heard a million times. So I always kind of strive to try and make something different that stands out. And this thing sounded kind of different to me already. And then there was a few other things that I changed. So let's just double check. Yeah, the wave position was a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left. The delays, I turned up the delays. And then it's got this pitch envelope, which I automate a little bit throughout the track, which actually sounds pretty cool. It gives it like a nice strong attack. And then just bringing up this decay. Kind of makes it a bit more sustained and cuts through the mix a bit better like that, I think. And then the release I was also automating, but you can get some nice variation using that. So yeah, I thought it was quite a cool little sound to stumble upon. It did have a bit too much high end, so I just rolled it off with the auto filter, and I automated that throughout the track, so like it gets brighter. I think I automated it very slightly, yeah. So it goes from like 4 kilohertz up to 6 and then back down. And then just took out some of the low end. So yeah, that's this main lead. Then there's this other lead that we have over here, which is actually playing like 2 different patterns through the track. It's playing this one in the breakdown. So it actually serves quite a strong purpose because it's creating like a nice low-end bass groove with these bottom notes. And the top one like harmonizes quite nicely with the lead and the breakdown. Especially over there, you're hearing like this, that's harmonizing with the sax. Yeah, so this I made from scratch. And we can just quickly remake. So this lead is a really simple lead. It's basically just a saw wave, one saw wave going into this filter over here, which has this envelope set to 3.43 and a decay of 1.66, sustain all the way down to make it like nice and plucky. And I'm kind of automating all of that stuff. So yeah, you can see this envelope is being automated, envelope amount, the decay is being automated, and also the frequency, the cutoff filter is also being automated a bit throughout this track. And then it's kind of also playing the same melody as the other lead through the drop. It only has this lead, it only has this melody in the breakdown, and yeah, that's it really, the breakdown and the outro. And this has a little bit of processing on it, so it's not just a plain saw wave. It's also got a little bit of overdrive, which gives it some nice bite. Can exaggerate it here. And then we've also got some delay on it and a little bit of reverb, using this hybrid reverb. I love using this reverb. You can find some really nice convolution sounds, but in this case I was just using this algorithm dark hall, which I think sounds really good. What I like to do with it is just to take out some of the low end and some of the mid-range stuff. And then there's this ARP, which is actually inspired by Singularity. You'll hear it's kind of playing the same or similar progression. So it's in a different key, but it's using like the same notes. If you had to transpose it back into the original key, it would be using the same notes. But I did change the pattern. It's not playing the same pattern as his track. And this is also a very, very simple sound. This has like literally no processing outside of a bit of reverb on there. And it's really just a plain old saw wave. And the envelope on the filter is very slightly like making it brighter at the start of the attack of the sound. So we've got 1.31 on the envelope here, and then the sustains down to like 75%, and the decay is at 1.72 seconds. And yeah, that's just a simple sound, and I don't think this kind of a sound needs to have a lot of character, because it's really just sitting behind all the other elements in the track. And it's kind of quite dark, so it's providing like a nice harmony for the track, a nice bass for it. It's not like sitting at the front. It's not the part that you're like paying attention to the most. So yeah, analog's like probably my favorite synth inside of Live 11. I don't really like Wavetable. I didn't actually use it at all in this track. And then we've got the sax lead, which is also just a preset that I found. Sax lead. Sounds like that originally. I don't think I did really any tweaking to the sound itself. Yeah. So you'll hear it's on its own, dry. It sounds pretty bad, I'd say. But what I liked was like it had this nice like LFO kind of drift that happens on the filter, it sounds like, or I'm not sure what it's actually happening on here. The LFO is actually only mapped to the pitch on these, it seems, which is interesting. So yeah, I couldn't really tell you how they made this preset, but I think it sounds cool. So I thought it had some potential. Taking out some of the low end and the high end, it sounds like this. and then some reverb. And the reverb is set to, yeah, just a blend 50-50, so pretty much the stock preset. I think I increased the decay a bit and have it set quite high, 56%, and then some delay. And then I did a little bit of pitch modulation here in the or automation using pitch bend. So the last note plays this, I think it's a G. Yeah, last note is a G and the track's in A, so I decided to just slide it up to the A as we go into the drop, which I thought sounded really cool. Okay, so that covers like the main leads in the track. Another big part of this track is the atmosphere. So without the atmosphere, the track actually sounds pretty empty, I'd say, if I just mute this and play it. You know, the atmosphere really brings it to life and takes it into this like whole melodic and beautiful kind of space. So the atmospheres alone sound like this. And I had to get kind of quite creative here because the sounds that come with Ableton on their own aren't super compelling. First up, I have this drone. Oh, there we go. I did actually use Wavetable. So yeah, Wavetable here is pretty much my standard drone you'd see me make in any one of my tracks from scratch. If I turn off the reverb, it's just a saw wave, 2 saw waves that are not even detuned or anything. And then just some classic unison, 7 voices set to 18% unison, and it's pretty much dead straight. And I think, is my LFO modulating here? No. We don't even have any modulation or anything on this. It's just literally got the frequency set down to 630 Hertz. And this hybrid reverb set to this bigger spaces, Arena Hall. And the blend is set 50-50, so we're also getting some of this dark hall. And then it's at 100% wet, and pretty much all of the life in the sound comes from this reverb. And then you'll hear it's kind of quite muddy, so I just low cut that mud out a bit. And that kind of formed that's probably the first thing I kind of made in this track. And then I got this background pluck. And I took inspiration for this from one of my other tracks where I had used a plugin called Tremolator, which kind of makes, well, it's a tremolo plugin, but it had this interesting rhythm. But because Ableton, you can do tremolo in Ableton using AutoPan, but it's only really basic rhythms like 16ths, 8ths and stuff that you can do. This was a complex rhythm, so I had to manually draw this in. So without the utility, it sounds like this. And with the utility, so this is like another one of those kind of unique sounds that pretty much nobody could just listen to and tell you how it was made. So yeah, the idea is to find a sample or make a sound, and then kind of just put it into a sampler and make sure it's nice and sustained, and then use a utility or a tremolo to make it pluck and groove with the track. And there's quite a lot of processing on this, as you can see. So originally the source sample, I think I have it saved. I made this in Operator, and it's even still got the sidechain in it from when I made it. Sounds like that, and it was, from what I can remember, just either a saw or a triangle wave and some noise and a formant filter. So yeah, I think it was probably a saw wave. So if we just set this to saw, and you go in here and change this to this so it's in serial, and then turn up the second oscillator, go to the envelope and make it straight like this, and change this to some noise, then turn this down, see how it sounds. So there we pretty much have the base of the sound. And then if you just go to Ableton, you search Formant, and you go to Audio Effects. It's not there. I think it's in EQ, EQ8, yeah, here, Formant. And you go to Vocal, I think it was RA that I used. Yeah, it was like that. And then I think I had like a little more EQ after that. I was just taking out the high end. Maybe a little less noise. And then sounds like some reverb on afterwards. And then, so yeah, let's just put a little bit of reverb on there. Just use the hybrid reverb. I love this reverb. Yeah, so that's pretty much how the sound was made, the source sound. And then I just printed it to audio, like by doing this, hitting resampling, hitting record. And then you just take this and drop it into, and just click on this MIDI channel and just drop it into a simpler, maybe convert it to a sampler. And then I just looped the sound, just a little portion of it. You might want to add some crossfades. Let me bring that down. Okay, and then you've got this, and now if you add your utility to it, you can you've got a pluck that like pretty much nobody else could possibly think of how to make. And then the great thing about this is you can do it with like vocal samples, with like samples of any like ethnic instruments and stuff, and get like really unique pluck sounds. So yeah, that's definitely a really cool tip that I would use. Okay, so yeah, that's that background pluck. And then we've just got some pad sounds. This is just the Dark Swarm preset. You can just search for that, and there's nothing special happening there. Just a bit of EQing and some compression, because sometimes, I don't know. The reason why the compression is there is because I had like a little melody that I played on this pad, and it got really resonant, and then the volume kind of built up. But that's no longer there, so it doesn't matter anymore. And then I have this other pad, which also adds quite a lot of kind of harmony to the track. And that's just because of these notes, really, and especially these three. So it sounds like this. And then you get these. And I've laid that with this piano. And these kind of add quite a lot to the track in my opinion. And this is this fifth glass motion pad. So I just pretty much just went through the sounds here and just searched for like ambient and evolving, and also looked through the pad. And yeah, so I found this one and I thought it sounded really cool, especially with a bunch of delay on it and some reverb. But it wasn't really cutting through the mix, and I thought just layering it with the standard grand piano, again with the same kind of delay and reverb effects and a bit of EQ to take out like the muddiness from it, that just helped it cut through the mix a bit. And then we've got this, which is just reversed. Basically took this, rendered it out to audio, and then just reversed the reverb tail. So kind of just, and this only happens once in the track. So it kind of pulls you into that pad, kind of, so you expect it a bit more. So if you don't know how to do that, it's pretty simple. You just make a new channel, solo this one, hit arm on this one, hit resampling, hit record. And then what you want to do is just grab that big tail, make sure you're cutting out the original notes, and then you can reverse this and just fade it. And then you have that sort of effect. So yeah, the next one is, this channel is called Ear Candy, and I think these really added to the track a lot too. You hear just this sample, it's my favorite one. It has like this really nice like grittiness to it. And how I made that was by taking this lead in the breakdown. Where is it? This one. And I just resampled it in the same way that I just showed you with the pad, and then reversed it and stretched it. So if we just take the sample and reverse it again, and I think this was it. Divided by 2. And just turn off all the effects. There we go. Yeah, so you can hear those lower notes coming through. And you can also hear the high notes. I can't remember exactly how I did it, but it's not really important how I made this very specific sample. What's important is I just took a sound, resampled it, reversed it, and then added a bunch of like distortion and effects to it. And just that process of getting creative can lead to some really cool sounds. Sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes you get lucky and you get something cool like this. So I'm just going to undo all of this and then show you the processing, because the processing actually really brought the sample to life. Okay, so I'll take you through the plugins here one by one. So that's how it sounded originally, reversed and stretched. Then I added this. So this is just a delay, and if you load up the delay, you can hit this button which switches it between time and sync. So I had it set to time, and I brought it all the way down to 1 millisecond. Oh, sorry. started it at like 20 milliseconds and then brought it down. And because it's set to repitch, it kind of repitches that delay and makes it almost like sweep up, kind of like a riser. And gives you like a really cool, like psychedelic kind of effect. And then I ran it through this amp, which just distorts it quite a lot. And it also makes it mono. And I think that made the low end sound really cool of the sample. And then this delay set to ping pong is just making it wide again. And then we got this utility, which I'm doing some more like panning with. You'll see it's automating from right to left. And then this hybrid reverb's kind of... Oh, the hybrid reverb is used later on. So I then found another part of the... Because the originally this ARP over here, this lead, you'll see there's a bunch of like muted notes. So originally it was quite a... it was almost like the lead of the track, like a melody, but it was a little bit too happy for my taste. But I'll just give you a preview of how it sounded. So it's quite pretty, I like it, but it just didn't really fit the vibe of the track. So that's why I muted all those notes. But so when I made this ear candy, I originally resampled like different parts of this lead. And so that's how I came across like all these little different parts here. So this is just essentially the same sample as this. But you can see that it's just these three hits over here, and they've been sped up. So this one's set to 61 BPM, which is half the speed it originally is. And this is then divided by 2 again. So, I mean, double the speed. So this is, wait, I'm confused. I don't know. Anyway, this is playing at that speed, and then this is twice the speed. It's also pitched down 5 semitones, so it's a fifth away from the original pitch. And then I just took this one and pitched it, I think, yeah, this one's -4, so it goes up a semitone, 1 semitone, and makes like almost like a little melody or like a harmony. So this way is playing forwards, and I think this way is reversed. Yeah. So just by manipulating that audio and experimenting, I also came up with that, which is pretty cool. And then, where does this reverb turn on? I think I used the reverb here. Yeah. So I think I used it here to kind of push it behind everything else, because this section is quite busy. So if I turn this reverb off, it'll probably fight a little bit with the lead. Yeah. So it brings it like right to the front of the mix, and then like this, I just pushed it behind it. So if anytime you have something that you like, you don't want to get rid of, but it's kind of arguing with the lead, you can probably use this tip, and that is to just take reverb and put it at 100%, and that pushes it to the back of the mix. And then there's just this little bit of ear candy here, which is this lead, the main lead. Just reversed. And I think pitched up, yeah, +7. So it like harmonizes with this. And that's just, yeah, it's not really noticeable unless you know it's there. but I just thought it would add some variation. And then there's one more little rhythmic pluck here. What's this? No, that's not doing anything. Oh, here it is. Yeah, so this plays here in the final drop. Found this preset called Echoic Chamber, and all I did was just EQ it a bit, because originally it had like this lower pluck which was not really serving any purpose in the track, and sitting in a spot that tends to get really messy, the mid-range over here, so I just took it out. All I really wanted was that harmonic over here and the character of it, this like noisy, breathy sound. Yeah, so that's it for the atmospheres. Then another cool thing that I made was this LFO riser made with analog. So analog has this LFO that only goes up to, I think it's like 40 hertz or something. Let's see. Oh, 14, I believe. 17, sorry. 17 hertz. Which is not as fast as I wanted it to go, but it sounded really cool when mapped to the pitch as well as the filter. Like, it made it really aggressive. So here at the end it gets like really like punchy. Without the phaser. And I really liked just the ending of it mostly. So I muted pretty much all of it. You'll see the volume only starts coming up over here. So it's really just two saw waves, one up, 7 semitones. They're both going through filter 1, which has mapped to the frequency, mapped LFO1 to the frequency. The frequency is all the way down. And so that's like LFO is making it open up. And then we're going into, I think if you go here to pitch, you can map it to LFO1 here. And this one is also mapped to LFO2. And I think they're coming up at kind of like different times. So one is controlling the pitch, one is controlling the LFO. Oh no, they're moving at the same time. So I could have just mapped them both to LFO1. And then you'll see there's like a whole bunch of automation happening here. It's the LFO, the volume. We've got a reverb that's kind of like coming down. Then this auto filter, which is sweeping up, I believe. No, the auto filter is not doing anything at the moment. And then some track panning to make it go left and right. Yeah, quite a lot of automation here. You can see, obviously, I was just experimenting. I did not really know exactly what I was doing. I was just messing around with it, and I think it sounded pretty cool, especially when this phaser comes in. So the phaser is originally set to 0, and then right at the end it sweeps up and makes it kind of like quite a cool effect. And then I have some ping pong delay bouncing around left and right. So that's that little effect over there. And then I just made a bunch of sweeps. It's your standard white noise sweep. I don't think I need to explain how to make that. It's pretty much just white noise with the filter, some high resonance that just goes sweeps all the way down, and then a bunch of reverb and delay on it. Then there's this clap fill. Pretty standard sound to hear in like melodic techno. And that's pretty much just a 909 clap with delay bouncing it left and right, and some reverb on it. And then also a filter, just taking out high end and low end. And the MIDI is also like the velocity goes from low to high to give it a bit of life. And then there's this clap build, which I thought sounded pretty unique. I like it because initially you don't really know what it's going to be until it starts opening it up and you can actually hear the clap. And that's just the same clap fill, just playing, here I made like a little bit of a groove just by manually shifting the velocities around, and it's playing 16th notes, and then the volume rises up over time, and this filter is what's making it get that like cool high-end sound in the beginning. Cool, yeah, so I really like that, and it's super simple. Then the kick I made using a 909 and just processing it for like an hour. I just sat there like messing with a 909 kick. Obviously, because I'm selling this, I couldn't just use like any drum samples from other companies' packs, so I had to make all my own drums. But I think they turned out really nicely. I'm not going to take you through the making of this kick because chances are that I probably wouldn't be able to remake it exactly the same way it sounds right now, but you'll hear the it basically sounds like a 909 kick. It's just been like compressed quite a lot. So the original 909 kick sounds like this. If we just find it, sounds like that. And it's kind of like got this distorted mid-range to it, and it tails off quite quickly. So I just compressed it so that the transient was pretty much as loud as the body, and just sat there and EQ'd it for a long time, and pretty much just played with EQ mostly, until eventually, and also the length, until eventually I was happy with it. And then I've got this perk loop over here, which I made by slapping my table like this. And there was like plates on the table, and it was noisy, and my chair was squeaking and stuff. So it had like all these cool like nuanced sounds in it. I played it I think twice and panned them left and right, processed them a lot. And I did that with external effects, so I rendered it down to audio. I actually did this for another track, but I thought it sounded cool here, and it's original, and I made it, so I included it, and I think it adds quite a lot to the track. Can't really hear it in the climax, but around here you probably will. Hear that panned right, and then this is the open hat, and I kind of just made this wide hat and took out the transient by bringing up the attack, because I didn't really like how the transient sounded in this track. And I also took out some of this here using the EQ. It's like this harsh S that was kind of hurting my ears. So I just EQ'd that out and then used the delay to make it wide. And because it's like, it doesn't have a transient, you don't really like get any problems with phasing issues. But I did check it in mono to make sure it sounded fine. And then I laid it with this 909 closed hat to give it a bit of punch. And I got this hat loop. All of these loops and stuff are included in the sample pack that I'm selling with the pack, with the project. And then the shaker, which is just I made in Serum. And then we've got this clap, which is pretty much just a 909 clap, kind of processed a lot. So taking out all the high end and boosting the mid range, putting a bunch of reverb on it, gets you this like really dark, almost like a wooden sounding clap, percussive sounding clap. And then it's got this delay which is being automated on an higher and then lower. So every second or so clap, or is it? No, it's every second clap in each phrase. Then it has a bit more delay on it. I just thought that created quite a nice little groove. And so all the percussion together with the kick sounds like this. Oh yeah, and I did not go over the bass yet. The bass was, I think, is also quite a big part of this track. It's a bit more complicated of a bass line than I usually make, but I think it works nicely and grooves quite well. So all the bass together sounds like this. So it starts out with this bass pluck, which actually came from this lead. I kind of made this by accident. I just was, making this little lead in the breakdown. Where is it? Here. Which has these lower notes that play. And I thought, hey, that makes quite a nice groove. So I turned it actually like into a proper part of the bass line, which is literally just that same lead duplicated and only playing the lower notes. And I think, yeah, even all the effects are the same. Still got the overdrive on it. I just took out any sub from it. And yeah, so it's that same analog sound. And so then originally I just had that and this sound playing, which so now the problem with this sound is that it's not very sustained. So kind of you have this problem where you're hearing the beginning of the note and the sub is the same. So it's literally just the sound layered and just low passed, and this one is high passed. So it's exactly the same sound for the sub. But you'll hear the sub and this both kind of disappear out of the mix. And without anything else, what happens is like the latter part of this phrase, or how long is this, of these 4 bars sound like there's no, like there's something missing, like the track feels empty. And when I inspected it, you'll see there's like a lot of, if we had to look at this on span, some other EQ, well, let's look at spectrum over here because we're using only Ableton stuff. You'll see this kind of like range just around 100 to 200. Gets really empty. And that didn't feel right. So I had to fill it out with this tom, which is made in operator. Quite a complicated sound just for a tom, but it's basically just a sine wave with a bit of like an envelope on it and a bit of noise to give it like an attack. And that's just filling in the gaps when this pluck isn't playing and after the initial hit of this mid bass. And so I essentially just did that out of like necessity to fill out the track, but it turned out to like really improve the groove of the track. So if I just muted this tom, so it feels a bit empty down there, but now if I turn this on, probably be able to notice it even more in this beginning here, where it's a bit less noisy. So that tom really fills it out. But let's get back to the sound design of this mid bass. So the mid bass is it's really just again another saw wave going into a filter. It's got a longer attack, 23 milliseconds, so it doesn't like have any click or anything to it. And then the filter is being controlled by an envelope. Envelope looks like that. Otherwise it's pretty much a sustained sound. And then, so yeah, a really simple sound. It's got this glide on it, but the glide isn't, as far as I can remember, I didn't end up really using it on any of the notes. I think it might glide over here. Yeah, so it's when I'm sliding up to that note over there. But then I turn off the glide because I don't want to slide into that one. And then it's going into this EQ8, which is taking out the sub and just boosting this mid-range to fill out those missing frequencies that I was talking about. And I'm sidechaining it to the main kick. And that's it. And then we've got the sub, which is the same sound which has just been low passed. But this is being sidechained to 3 different things. So we're sidechaining it to the main kick, to the pluck sub. So this sound, the bass of that sound. And then I'm also sidechaining it to the tom. So that just really just cleans up the sub of the track to make sure that we don't have overlapping sub frequencies. So it's pretty much just the sustained sub that is getting out of the way of all the plucky, groovy stuff. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. This tom sound design I've kind of covered, but again, this is something that took me quite a long time to figure out, but basically it's just, yeah, sine wave, noise oscillator doing the attack, the really short 11-second decay, and then the attack is set to 1.8 milliseconds with the initial at 0, so it holds out for a little bit, and then it's pretty much just a sine wave, and then it's going into this chain here, which has got a little bit of distortion. So without that's how it sounds on its own. And then if I include the other chain with the overdrive, it gives it a tiny bit of like harmonics. If you had to look at that on an analyzer, you can see it's not just a plain sine wave, it's got a bit of stuff happening down here. And then goes into a saturator, and that's it. I just wanted like a really clean, punchy sound. Okay, cool. So I think that's pretty much everything. Lastly, there's a bit of drum verb over here. So I'm just sending all my percussion to this, and that's set to Made for Drums digital drum plate on the hybrid reverb, and that's only using that one, and set to 100% wet, and then just mixed in lightly. And that just kind of puts everything into a room. And then mastering wise, my mastering chain is pretty much just lots of glue compressors because I think they sound good, and I hate the way the limiter sounds, but I just put it right at the end anyway, doing very little limiting because it just is not like you can hear that limiter working when you push it, so definitely don't push it. But I got this first glue compressor which has a fast attack and a fast release, so it's like catching all the peaks but like very lightly, because again you don't want to be compressing too hard, you don't want to feel the volume pumping up and down. And then I have this other compressor which has got like a longer attack and a longer release, which is kind of just smoothing things out a bit. And they'll probably be working more in the busier parts here. Yeah, I mean, they're barely touching the sound. Probably could have pushed them a bit more, to be honest, but I think the track got loud enough, so I wasn't too worried. And then it goes into this glue compressor, which is not actually compressing at all. It's got the soft clipper turned on, and then I just pushed the makeup gain until this clip light was, or until it sounded distorted. You can see the clip light working, and that's just going to be like essentially clipping the sound and making it really loud, which will sound a lot better than the shitty limiter that comes with Ableton. So if you wanted to push your loudness, I would say push it rather through the soft clipper until it sounds a bit distorted, and then back it off so you don't hear any distortion, and then you'll get like a nice limited sound. And then afterwards I go into this OTT, which is only mixed to 7%, and the time is set to 1000%. So if I mix this to 100% wet, it's like an incredibly compressed version of the sound, but I'm only mixing it in very lightly, so it was at 7%. You can only just barely hear it. If you've got like a trained ear, you'll be able to hear the little bit of, it's like a sort of like parallel compression, but like extreme parallel compression. And you can kind of hear that it kind of just adds this really compressed version of the track mixed lightly into the master, and that just helps get it a little bit louder. And then going into another saturator after that. So there's lots of saturation and clipping and stuff happening here. And I brought down the bass a little bit so we don't clip the sub as much. So it kind of is more biased towards driving the high end of the track. And then I use this EQ8 to kind of just take out any low end below 23 hertz here in this case. I would recommend doing this with a stock EQ8 because it's going to have phasing issues. But I just did it because this is what I would normally be doing with a linear phase EQ like Pro Q3. But I did set it to oversampling to make sure I get the best quality, and hopefully it doesn't make the track sound any worse. And then some very gentle EQing over here, like just taking out a touch of those lower mids. And then the limiter. And then I think I got it to like -8 LUFS or something, which is loud enough. So yeah, that's pretty much how I made a melodic techno track using just stock plugins. All right. Thanks for watching. Again, you can grab the project and all the samples from my shop, basicwaves.com. Link is in the description. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it and you learned something. And I will see you soon.